Hello, welcome back. If you watched my last video, then thank you. I've got another video essay on the way. In the meantime, there is something I'd like to talk about that I've been seeing all over social media. I've seen it on Instagram Reels, it's on YouTube now, I've heard it's on TikTok, and it's AI history. The queen of this genre seems to be Chloe versus history, created by a man named Jonathan Laramie. So I guess the queen of AI history is a man. She's been to ancient Egypt, she's been to Pompeii, she's been to Tudor England, and all of these videos have been very well received. All the comment sections are praising it compared to the normal AI slop content. There have been kind of mainstream news articles and news reports which seem to be very impressed by the use of this new AI technology to inform and to educate people on historical topics. So today I thought that as someone who actually studies history and who's interested in these kind of things, that we'd go through and we'd fact check one. And I don't think there's a better video to start with than the history of Titanic. It's one of history's most dramatic and interesting episodes, I think.
This is Southampton Docks on April 10th, 1912, and I am holding a third-class ticket which cost me roughly the equivalent of $500 in today's money.
In this episode, I used real historical illustrations and photographs of the Titanic in the public domain to turn them into photorealistic worlds. Everything you see is as close as we can get to the real thing. Enjoy, guys. This was a lot of work.
At least they're using real historical images and sources to generate their AI videos. I suppose that's better than just letting the AI imagine for itself. But there's some kind of weird inaccuracies already. The first one I noticed was that she said a third class ticket would cost around $500 today. At the time, they cost £7, which is closer to £1,000 today, or $1,300. And I can't understand how this mistake is already there, considering Jonathan Laramie has said he uses AI to generate the script as well, and the information used to generate this script would have been taken from Google. But if you just Google for yourself, you'll see that they got the figure wrong. Also, it seems the luggage stewards are very, very confused. They're walking one way on the dock and then the other way. And we see here in the recreation of the reception room that there's just piles of luggage strewn around everywhere. So I guess they never figured out what they were meant to be doing. I don't think I need to point out that there wouldn't be just piles of luggage around any section of the ship apart from the luggage hold. And there's some very lonely rich ladies here playing cards all alone. Maybe they should get together and play together. It'd be much more fun.
He just grabbed my hand. I don't know what he's looking for. Is something wrong with my hand?
Health check, madam.
Apparently, the class division has already started. I just watched all the first class passengers over there walk straight on.
This part is true, and it's interesting to see. This is basically a health inspection designed to prevent disease outbreaks or lice. I think the image we have of Titanic now is that it was a luxurious palace floating on the sea, but it was basically an immigration ship, and most of the passengers traveling on it were immigrating from Great Britain to America. America had very, very strict quarantine regulations at the time, so the White Star Line were required to check their passengers, their third class passengers, before letting them on the boat. The thinking was that third class are more likely to carry disease, and I suppose it's partially true, since these are people who'd have less access to hygiene and to healthcare, who'd live in worse conditions with more overcrowding, so there's more disease in the first place. I'm sure we'll get onto this later in the video, but this class segregation lasted the entire duration of the voyage. There were metal gates dividing third class from the rest of the passenger areas, just because these are people who are more likely to carry disease, even though they've been inspected. But I'm sure we'll get onto class separation as we go along.
Expecting, I don't know, ropes and barrels, but this is a corridor, a proper corridor with electric lighting on a ship.
I don't know why she'd be expecting ropes and barrels. It's not like she's getting a pirate ship in the 1700s. By 1912, ocean liner travel, North Atlantic travel, is quite sophisticated. Why you'd ever expect like a pirate ship conditions, I don't know. behind those two Peaky Blinders we saw, suitcases with wheels haven't been invented yet, so that lady was just dragging her possessions along the floor.
G73, this is me. Oh, clean sheets? Actual clean sheets? Running water? All right, let's test the beds out. Kind of firm. All right, so being 5'10" is a problem. Were people just short back in these times? Like, genuinely, who was this bed designed for?
Jonathan, what was the thinking behind that prompt? So we see a third class cabin here. Looks pretty good. Nearly all of them had running water, like we see, although even the third class beds were long enough to accommodate a 6-foot-tall man. So the part about beds being smaller because people are smaller is just inaccurate and wrong. If Chloe was a real person and she was traveling on the Titanic, third class steerage was segregated amongst themselves as well, not just from other classes. So single men traveling alone would be accommodated in the bow, so at the front of the ship. That's where their cabins would be. Women traveling alone, like Chloe would be housed in the stern of the ship, so at the back. That's where their cabins are. And between the two, there are families traveling as a unit, all housed together. So if Chloe was real, there'd be other single women that she probably wouldn't know sleeping in the same cabin as her.
Apparently we are about to leave.
Okay, if you ignore the man standing in the dress behind her, this looks basically how you'd expect it to look.
We're moving!
It was very common for passengers as their vessel left to gather on the boat deck just to, I guess, wave goodbye to the families they're leaving behind, or the country, I guess, they're leaving behind, since most of them are immigrating. Okay, this looks to be one of the third class dining rooms. Like other third class spaces, this was segregated as well. So men would be separated from the women and the families. Men would be in the rear dining saloon, whereas women and families would be in the front dining saloon. And the separation of steerage in this way wasn't unique to Titanic. It had been going on ocean liners through the 19th century. So it wasn't unique as standard, and people wouldn't be surprised about this. I guess we have to presume that Chloe is in the forward dining saloon, although there's been no mention of the other one.
For starters, we have rice soup. Rice soup? I'm sure that's just a creative way of saying rice with water. And then we have roast beef, followed by plum pudding. That sounds like a bit of me. I mean, not bad for a third class menu.
Okay, it looks like real Titanic menus have been used to generate this part of the video. Food would be included in the price of the ticket. And considering these are third class passengers, the menu is quite generous. Lots of people would have been eating better than they normally would be on land. So breakfast would have smoked herring and checked potatoes, ham and eggs, marmalade, jam, bread. Lunch, which was weirdly referred to as dinner in the third class for reasons that I don't know, usually started with some kind of appetizer like rice soup, although rather than just being like warm water with rice thrown in, an effort would be made to make this a nice meal, and vegetables would be used for flavoring, like onions, cheap stuff, which is hearty, however cheap it is. Then there would be roast meat, roast beef, boiled potatoes, corn, gravy, more fresh bread, fruit, generally followed by some kind of sweet dessert like a plum pudding. And dinner or supper, so the last meal of the day, would be more fresh meat, maybe a rabbit pie, more potatoes, more fresh breads, some butters and jam if you want it. So not bad really, and considering it is third class, the White Star Line seem to have put effort into making their passengers feel comfortable during their crossing, and I think they're definitely getting their money's worth.
I think I'm getting it. Don't you agree, Liam?
Okay, it looks like Chloe's made a friend here named Liam, and they're in the third class general room, which was quite a small space, but it was entirely intended for recreation and for entertainment. It was one of third class's very few desegregated entertainment spaces. So it was open to both sexes, men, women and children could all come here together to enjoy themselves through the voyage. And it seemed to have been fairly popular. There was a piano against one of the walls, and these are people who are immigrating, so they're bringing their possessions with them. If they can play an instrument, they're gonna bring it with them on the voyage. So there was a lot of music here and lots of dancing. We know for a fact that on the night Titanic sank, there had in fact been a party in the general room, which went on until 10 p.m. and it had only ended because the chaperones, the White Star Line chaperones, had kicked people out when the lights were meant to turn out. So a very popular space, and it's appeared in lots of Titanic media before. So James Cameron's Titanic, for example, I think has a scene of the third class general room, and they're having a party in that as well.
You're a time traveler.
Yeah, and I need a way of getting into first class. Any ideas?
So there's a gate on E deck, separates third from the upper classes. There's a steward who stands near it most of the day, but every evening around this time he disappears. 20, maybe 30 minutes.
And the gate?
Unlocked.
These are the Bostwick gates I mentioned earlier. They're the metal dividers between different sections of the ship, and their entire purpose is to control the movement of people on the boat. There was a Bostwick gate on E deck, but it was meant to prevent third class passengers from using Scotland Road, which was the crew alleyway, rather than to stop third class from entering first class. There wouldn't be anywhere on the boat where third class spaces would be right next to first class spaces in this way. And another thing, the White Star Line aren't hiring stewards to stand and watch metal gates during a long ocean crossing when you can just lock the gate and now you don't have to pay someone to watch it. So this bit is a bit silly, really.
Don't ask how I
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on how accurate that outfit is just because I don't know how accurate that outfit is. I'm not an expert on women's clothes in 1912, I'm afraid. But to change clothes in 5 minutes is quite impressive, considering first class women brought maids along to look after their wardrobes and to help them change. So to do it in 5 minutes seems very quick, especially in a relatively cramped third class cabin like that.
Wait.
Don't run.
I'm not gonna run.
Okay, like I said earlier, there is nowhere on the boat where third class spaces and first class spaces were right next to each other. Third class were separated by Bostwick gates from second class and from crew areas, but there would just be nowhere. These people would not even encounter each other on the boat because they're not housed anywhere near each other. And you definitely wouldn't expect to see a Bostwick gate cutting through a corridor like this, which is decorated relatively cheaply on one side where the third class are, and absolutely resplendently on the other side where first class are. It just wouldn't happen. It's quite an interesting choice, I think. I suppose I'll say now before we move on that these Bostwick gates are the ones which generate all the myths about third class passengers being left to die in deep down in the ship whilst richer people save themselves on the lifeboats. Once it became clear to the crew of the danger the ship was in, these measures of restricting people's movement on the boat are completely removed. So all of the gates are opened as soon as it's clear that they have to be to save people. And the class segregation had to break down just by necessity of saving lives. The second and first class areas had more stewards because these are people who have paid more money for better service, so they have more people to look after them. But once it's obvious that we're going to have to evacuate as many people as we can and get people out of their cabins onto the boat deck, these other extra stewards in the rich areas were sent down to help in the evacuation of third class cabins. Whilst it's true that if you were third class, you're more likely to die in the sinking, I think this is just because third class had further to go to get to the boat deck and to get to lifeboats compared to the other classes who were housed further up the ship, closer to the lifeboats. I really think this is why more of those people died compared to the others. They just had further to go. And by the time they get up to the lifeboat deck, a lot of time has already passed between the iceberg collision, realizing the danger the ship's in, having to get all these people out, and then these people finally making it to the boat deck. It's a lot of time. I will say before we move on that the biggest determining factor of who lived and who died wasn't class, it was sex. So a higher percentage of first-class men died compared to third-class women. And this is true for the crew as well. So whilst 91% of female staff survive, only 21% of male staff survive.
So this is the first class reception room, and I have never wanted a cup of tea more than I do right now.
Okay, that man was dressed in white tie, so he's a passenger rather than a staff member, though he seems to be serving food in the reception room. The reception room is the same room used at the start of the video to kind of show off how these videos were generated by using real sources and how, because of that, they should be accurate. Although it's kind of being presented here as more of a cafe rather than a social lounge, the reception room was a space for first class to go to gather and to socialize before and after meal times. So the orchestra would play here between 4 and 5 p.m. in the evening, and tea would be served before dinner. And then it'd be open again after dinner from 8 to 11. And the orchestra would be here again for some of that time. There'd be cigars and there'd be alcohol, and it was quite a popular space. It'd be generally rather busy. Although, again, it was more of a social lounge rather than kind of cafe environment like we're seeing here. It doesn't really make sense to go to a cafe and eat just before you go and have dinner anyway.
This is the largest room on the ship, and they are currently serving an 11-course dinner in
Okay,
it.
this is the first class dining saloon. It's one of maybe 3 or 4 different restaurants open to first class. So they had lots of choice depending on what they wanted to eat. And it was the largest dining room open to first class and the largest room on the ship. So all that is true. And it looks generally how you'd expect it to.
So I found the first class smoking room, and sadly I cannot go in. It was exclusively male. The room is incredible. It's all dark mahogany and stained glass and leather armchairs. It looks like the most expensive library you've ever seen, except everyone is gambling in it.
I wish we'd have seen more of the smoking room there. It was open to males only. It was intended to kind of function like a English gentleman's club, so that was the vibe they were going for, I guess. There'd be smoking, of course, and drinking, and gambling went on in there too, although on Sundays it was meant to be prohibited by the White Star Line, but I think it happened anyway. There were female kind of dominated spaces, but this is just because of preference rather than any enforcement. So the first class writing room, for example, was very popular amongst women, and if you were to go in there, you'd mainly find women. But there wasn't this kind of enforcement of separation like there is with the smoking lounge. Interestingly, because Titanic hit the iceberg so late into the evening, quarters to 12 at night, these social spaces like the smoking lounge were meant to be closed. But like the Bostwick gates, the restrictions on passenger movements were completely lifted. So there are passengers like Colonel Archibald Gracie walking through these spaces even quite late into the sinking. Like Colonel Archibald Gracie says that he sees stewards in here and first class men still using these spaces quite late into the evening and quite late into the sinking as well, long after it's become clear that the vessel is going to sink and there aren't enough lifeboats for everyone. Okay, here she is in another first class restaurant, the Café Parisien, though this one seems to have a completely open wall facing out onto some kind of promenade deck, which is wrong. Another thing, she seems to only have one first class outfit that she's wearing no matter what time of day it is. If she is trying to pretend to be a rich Edwardian lady, she's going to be changing clothes multiple times a day in accordance with pretty ridiculous clothing etiquette from the time.
I've been sat here in the Café Parisien for hours just going over what I'm going to say to him. I'm thinking, Captain Smith, I have very credible information that there is a significant iceberg risk tonight, and I strongly urge you to reduce speed after dark.
I mean, I guess she has good intentions, but to warn the captain in this way is pretty foolish, considering it's not an information problem that he has. It's not that he doesn't know that there's ice around. the Titanic has a Marconi wireless system. They have operators communicating with other ships and nearby ports, and although they're spending a lot of time sending out passenger communications and letters and that kind of thing, they are receiving iceberg warnings and writing them down, and the entire crew navigating the ship are aware there's ice around.
Captain Smith typically leaves around 9 to return to the bridge. I am going to wait right here until he comes out. Just so you know, this dress weighs approximately 40 pounds.
40 pounds? 40 pounds is heavier than a light suit of medieval plate armor. So I really wonder what that dress is made of. Even kind of very heavily embroidered and furred evening gowns, like I think hers is meant to be, would not even come close to that. It'd be £7 if that. So this is mad, and how you get this, how this slips through, I don't know.
Captain Smith, I'm so sorry. I just need a moment of your time. I have strong reason to believe that tonight there will be ice, like loads of ice, and I really think you need to slow down, sir.
We have received several ice warnings today, madam, and I can assure you our officers are monitoring the situation.
Yes, he's aware of the iceberg warnings. I guess if you were going to go back in time and you wanted to prevent the Titanic from sinking, it would be more sensible to make him aware of the atmospheric conditions. Titanic sank on a completely still ocean, like unusually still for the North Atlantic, which meant that lookouts looking for icebergs can't see water crashing against the base of these icebergs on the waterline. Alongside this, there was completely no moon, which makes spotting icebergs even more difficult. So maybe if you were going to try and warn him, make him aware of these conditions rather than just repeating the same iceberg warning he's heard all day long. Titanic wasn't going at top speed. A lot is made of kind of Bruce Ismay, the owner of the White Star Line, encouraging him to arrive early in New York to impress the press. But Titanic wasn't at top speed anyway. Okay, the forward bow section here, where Chloe's standing, is not open to passengers whatsoever. It's crew-only area because there's mooring equipment and heavy anchors and chains and stuff. So people aren't meant to be there. Had she been stood there for 20 minutes, someone probably would have seen her. Maybe the lookouts, who are, I think, right behind her in a kind of pirate ship crow's nest up there. The real one looked nothing like that. Okay, First Officer Murdoch is the officer on the bridge at the time, and it looks like he swerved into the iceberg here, which did not happen. It also seems that the iceberg hit on the wrong side of the boat than what it actually did. It hit on the starboard side, the right side. It also seems to be about a third taller than the iceberg should be.
Most people on the ship right now are asleep in their beds. They felt almost nothing. And this, right now, this is just the start of...
Though I guess she's right that most people on the boat were asleep, and there was lots of confusion in the early stage of the sinking about what just happened. Most people are asleep. If they are awake, most people didn't feel very much at all, if anything.
It was an iceberg.
An iceberg? Well, I'm sure it's nothing serious. These things are built to handle a bit of ice.
Lots of people out on the deck already. I don't know what he's doing in the dining room, because the dining room is closed. He should be... well, he probably should be asleep, really. He also got dressed very quickly, considering it only just happened. Though he is right that the Titanic was built to withstand a collision. There are watertight doors which slammed down basically immediately. I think 16 watertight compartments, and had only one or two of these been breached, Titanic would have probably been fine. But because it wasn't just one big hole in one or two sections of Titanic, and the iceberg kind of chipped away, opening up seams along 5 compartments. As these compartments filled with water, and more of the ship was dragged at a steeper angle because of the weight of that water, water was able to spill over the top of the bulkheads, back and back and back, which drags the whole ship down, and the whole system failed. Just because too many compartments were breached, and the watertight bulkheads didn't extend all the way. They weren't closed off at the top, so water did spill over, and that's ultimately why Titanic sank.
Captain's orders, if you could put on your life jacket and make your way to the boat deck at your convenience.
My life jacket? What on earth for?
Purely a precaution, sir.
They are keeping everyone calm, not telling them what is actually happening.
Okay, here we see what are meant to be first class stewards, I think, waking people up to get them out and get them on the lifeboat deck. It makes sense for them to want to keep people calm. It took at least half an hour for the crew to realize what's actually happening. There's a big communication delay as well, because there's no like PA system for the crew's senior officers or the crew's designer to explain to people what's happening. So it wasn't clear at the beginning that the Titanic is going to sink, and people do need to start making their way to the to the few lifeboats that there are.
That lifeboat, it holds 65 people. There were maybe 28 in it. Some people won't get in. They genuinely believe standing on this deck is safer than getting into that boat.
So it's true that early in the sinking, partially because of the lack of information at the beginning, lifeboats were being released half full. There's lots of reasons for this. Number one, the crew weren't sure that they could actually fill these boats to capacity alongside all the heavy clothes and the blankets and the supplies which the stewards and the bakers are bringing up from the storerooms to put in these boats. Another thing, it's not really very appealing to sit in a wooden boat in the North Atlantic in the middle of the night when it's freezing cold, especially when you're on an ocean liner which doesn't seem to be in much danger. You know, it's been half an hour and the boat looks fine, so why would you want to get in a lifeboat? A lot is made of Titanic carrying far fewer lifeboats than it needed to save everyone, but Titanic was in line with regulations for the time, and because of the nature of these lifeboats and how they're launched, it takes time to prepare them and to manually lower them down on davits, on ropes down to the waterline to be released. The Titanic, because it has the Marconi wireless system, the thinking at the time is that if a ship comes into distress, they can call a rescue ship who will come and save them. And the lifeboats, rather than functioning as places people can survive in the Atlantic Ocean, are meant to function as ferries between boats from one ship in distress to a rescue ship. So you shouldn't need lifeboats for the entire population of the vessel, because again, they're just meant to function to ferry people from one to another. Titanic is unusual in that it kind of went down from the head and didn't list one way or the other. It didn't lean very extremely. Most ships, when they sink, have a very extreme list depending on which compartments inside are filled with water. When a ship is listing like this, you can't launch half the lifeboats depending on which side the lean is. So if you are going to have enough lifeboats for the entire population of the ship, you need double capacity. You need enough lifeboats on each side of the ship to accommodate everyone on board, and that's going to take so long to get everyone in. The crew how the crew are going to have enough time to prepare all of these stacks of lifeboats and to launch them before the ship sinks. It's just unfeasible, really, and Titanic barely gets all its lifeboats away. Okay, here we see Titanic sinking from a kind of zoomed out perspective. I think there's a modern United States flag flying on a massive flagpole there, which bewildering, really. And there's lifeboats still hanging from the davits. Like I said just now, it really wouldn't matter if Titanic had more lifeboats, because the crew were still working on launching them as the boat deck submerged beneath their feet. Every single lifeboat from the lifeboat deck hanging from the davits had been launched before then, but there were two remaining ones, which were Collapsible A and Collapsible B. First Officer Murdoch and Charles Lightoller had each been in charge of launching boats on their section of the ship, and they did a very good job of it, and they launched every lifeboat from their section of the ship, aside from those two remaining ones, which were housed on top of the officers' quarters. They were kind of intended more for decoration than any practical purpose. They weren't expected to ever have to be used, and because of that, there's no planned way to get them off the roof. So Murdoch and Lightoller get their remaining crew together, and these lifeboats are thrown off the roof onto the boat deck with the hope of saving more people. And the crew works so hard, they are launching these boats and filling them with people as the boat deck disappears beneath their feet. We don't know how William Murdoch died, but Charles Lightoller says that he looks over at his friend William Murdoch as Titanic kind of surges down and a big wave is washed over the boat deck, which carries away Murdoch. So to have these lifeboats still hanging unused whilst people drown on the boat is not just inaccurate to what happened in history. It's disrespectful to the crew that worked so hard that night to save as many people as they could. On a lighter note, though, no pun intended there, the lights are still burning in this, which is true. Titanic's lights were blazing practically until the boat snapped in half, and that is testament to the engineers, none of whom survived. None of the engineers who had spent the entire night basically preventing the ship from falling apart around them, pumping out water to prevent the list and keeping the lights on. None of them survived because they're still working as everyone around them is trying to save themselves, really.
I don't have the words to describe what I saw today.
It's a very sparsely populated lifeboat considering she was still on the boat quite late into the sinking. There's no crew present at all, it seems, on that lifeboat. And there's a lady behind her wearing very few warm clothes, which people were told by their stewards to dress up warmly, so this just wouldn't happen either. Okay, the overturned lifeboat they're talking about here is Collapsible B. That's the one Lightoller threw off the officers' quarters onto the deck, and that's the one he used to survive the sinking, along with Colonel Archibald Gracie we mentioned earlier. Lots of the accounts we have of people who were still on the boat until nearly the very end, people like Gracie and Charles Lightoller, come from people who were on this overturned Collapsible right at the end of the sinking. But why Jonathan Laramie's chosen to use this real person's name and someone's identity in his AI video, which I think we've seen has been pretty shoddily made and poorly researched, and I mean he says he cares about historical accuracy, but you can just Google some of this stuff and you can see it's wrong. The only conceivable reason I can think of to use a person's real name and to kind of make it clear that you've based this person off a real character in an educational video like this is to give your video more grounding in historical reality. But the character of Liam in this, all he does is interact with a fake AI person who never existed and to guide her from a part of the ship which didn't exist through a gate which didn't exist by means which are inaccurate to a different corridor which didn't exist. So what is the point of appropriating someone's name to do that? I don't know. And at what point after you die can your name be used to generate an AI character to make you do things you never did or couldn't do? I don't know. I'm looking at the comments now, and people who I'm guessing aren't very familiar with Titanic are impressed, I guess. They believe that they're being told reliable and accurate and well-researched information. And the video said itself that this is an accurate portrayal of Titanic. Alongside that, I'm looking now at Jonathan Laramie's description under the video, and he's talking about how much work went into this and how much everything from the dinner to the ship's layout to the crew and the lifeboats and the timings of everything are accurate, and how much work went into making sure this video is an accurate portrayal of the history, because he says these are people who deserve to have their story told accurately. But most people who watch this video, I'm guessing, because they're watching this video, aren't as invested in the history as I'm. 2.4 million people have watched this, and generally, I'm guessing, based on the comments, people think that it's accurate history. So it's just annoying. And I don't really know what the solution to this is. I'm sure there are academics out there who'd love to collaborate with Jonathan Laramie and use this AI tool to generate history content that people clearly enjoy watching and find to be entertaining. But until then, here we are. I was going to end the video right here, but I'm looking through the comments now. This video has 2.1 million views, 2.4 million views, sorry, within the space of 2 months. And there's no kind of significant explanation of anything in here. It's kind of just vibes-based education, if that. Vibes-based misinformation, if I was going to be more harsh. There are just consistent inaccuracies through the entire duration of the video, which culminate in a view of history which is just inaccurate and completely wrong. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching my video more than I enjoyed watching this video. Thank you for watching if you made it this far. Thank you.